everyone. Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, presented by Zwift for another stunning edition of the men's Strade Bianche race. We had the women's recap earlier in the day, a chaotic finish with some questionable team tactics in the final of that race. Something similar here, a great day for team tactics discussions, 185 Ks from Siena to Siena. It has 11 gravel sectors. They're longer in the middle and then 3 punchy ones in the last 23 kilometers. The decisive one is the Monte Santa Maria sector 8 usually, with about 50 Ks to go. That is where Pog went solo last year. It's where groups often form, like in 2021. And then it's up and down throughout the whole finale before the punchy finish into Siena. We had Pidcock on the start list, Van der Poel, no Pogačar, no Wout van Aert, Jumbo-Visma bringing Valter, Benoit, and not even Tratnik to this race. Alaphilippe here too, Benji.
Yep.
Off the back of a win last week. What did you expect from Quick-Step's tactics before the race? With Van der Poel, by the way, everybody, $2, $2.50 favourite. What did you expect Quick-Step's approach to be?
I don't know. It's difficult, because they don't have the Asgreen type and so forth in this squad as well. So I'm looking at what can Alaphilippe do at this race. We've seen him do well at one of the 2 French classics at the end of February. We see him do a bit poorly in the second one that came in that weekend. And then I feel like when we look at this parcours in Strade, you've got the option of going early with moves on Monte Santa Maria, or you stay in the second group and hope that it comes back towards the end. That's what we see in previous years often happen. I think Wout van Aert launched on Monte Santa Maria. We saw Van der Poel launch on Santa Maria back in the day, forming a group. We saw loads of stuff happening on that section. But I don't know. I had this thing in my head like this could easily become the kind of race where Alaphilippe could just disappear in the background. Like that second French Classics. Or he follows an attack early. I didn't really see the possibility of just following a second group and maybe just waiting for the final climb. I didn't see the possibility there. So the only option for me was going early, try and form a group early and see whether that goes somewhere. That's how I saw that. What's your take on that?
Yeah, we're coming off the back of a victory, and he won in this race in 2019, but then their team's frankly not that good.
Yep.
Like, no Asgreen, as you said. Van Sevenant is here with Baggioli. They're quite good. Pedersen was good early, but Ballerini ain't in the shape he used to be in 2021. So I thought Ineos overall, even without Turner, with Le Chef and Pidcock, was a pretty potent duo. And what I was really looking for was how could Alpecin be good enough with, I think they got Gergel now, the core specialist. What could they do to control this race? But speaking of Van der Poel, you'll know that he is on Zwift, training on Zwift, and the all-new Zwift Hub is out from $4.99, the best priced trainer on the market. Cycling News says it represents better value for money than any other turbo trainer on the market. And if you just look across the offering in the market, that seems pretty obvious to me. Don't pay 4 figures for a direct drive smart trainer anymore, and that can get you jumping in and jumping onto Zwift to kickstart and crush your fitness goals this year. I'm back in freezing -9 Andorra, and I'm happy to be back on Zwift, even with a voice crack. I'm out of the podcasting game, Benji. I'm battling through some jet lag, but listen, I'm a pro. I put in for LRCP anyway. This race sucked for the first hour I watched. Live coverage starts boring. They're doing the gravels like smooth. It's all one group. Break is literally not losing any time with who was in it? Demarchi, Ivan Romeo, and your boy, Bistrom.
Yeah, Sven-Erik Bistrom in that front group. Demarchi was also looking pretty strong in that group as well. And those two would actually play a role in the final as well. So keep those 2 names in mind. They might actually do something here. But there are also some crashes already happening. Sagan wobbling on the side of the road with 1 foot out of his pedal a few times. Madua crashing, Valter crashing, Carlos Rodriguez crashing, all 3 at the same time with roughly 68k to go. Fortunately for them, it's still 18 kilometers to go before the race will likely explode in the Monte Santa Maria. So the section that came at that very moment was not the most ruthless where they crashed. So they were able to move back to the front, get back into the group, Mudderwells and Valter. So they already had like a bit of energy drawn from that crash, though.
UAE too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you mentioned Formolino punctured or loads of guys from UAE punctured today, I think.
Formula was indeed one of the ones that punctured. I feel like he had a rough time coming back because he was later in the race, where he was actually on like an uphill gravel section where that occurred to Formula.
Of Sector 7.
Exactly. Now, we get to Monte Santi Mari. That's where stuff is about to go down. And it kind of looked like nothing was going to happen for a bit. I already felt like we saw Mathieu van der Poel before Monte Santi Mari and the run-in towards it, kind of like waving back and forth just to get into position. I was like, that's a bit weird. But we get to Monte Santi Mari, and we see a move at the front by Bettiol with Bajoli following.
And Van der Sande had been pacing.
Yeah, Jumbo had been pacing a bit with Van der Sande, you're right. Maybe they want to try and make the race a bit hard because they saw a weakness in somebody. I don't know, I'm just inventing a reason, to be honest. Because after the sector, Van der Sande ain't going to be there. That's probably the reason.
I guess. But yeah, Bettiol going with Pidcock, Benji, I thought it was going to be Tollett. I thought it was Tollett bridging because I was like, this is way too early. Because this was different to the Pogacar race. Remember, Pogacar went 50k solo last year. That was after crash at 95Ks, huge chase for Quickstep and Alaphilippe. He was in the front group. Then Wellens and Lotto made the race much harder from my perspective on stage 7. There were groups anticipating before Monte Santo Maria. The data made something different, but from my perspective, the race was much more difficult for more teams last year. And so when I saw Pidcock going from such a large group with Bettiol, I was like, holy fuck. Yeah. But then his gap was huge. And it was only Baggioli going with him. And when Baggioli went with him, Benji, and Quickstep started blocking it up, I was like, this is one of the tactics where you think you're doing the right thing, but you're actually creating a really bad situation for yourself. Why do you agree with that?
Well, first of all, you're getting into a situation where on paper, Pidcock is better than Baggioli in that group. So if you keep working there, Pidcock will drop Baggioli, then Alaphilippe will be too far to help out. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to. Yeah,
you're going to block it up. Pidcock gets 30, 40 seconds free, quote unquote free, with Bettiol, and you're like, fuck, we got to chase. That happens quite a bit. And Pidcock, Bettiol working. Baggioli's not pulling. That's the correct thing to do, 100%. I can't remember who was chasing. Maybe Bahrain. The chase was very iffy because there's Chef and Tollett at the front dissuading people.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of Sector 8 is mostly heli shots because it's dicey with the motos. But I think Ineos are doing a really good job blocking. They get off Sector 8. No, sorry. Backtrack. Pidcock goes full threat of death solo. With 50Ks to go. Yeah, like, it was... I hope there is moto footage of that because I've never seen someone do a gravel descent so fast in my life.
He overtook a motorbike in the same road that he attacked away from Bettiol and Baggioli, who were just left in their place, basically. It was not planned, he said afterwards, right?
Because why would you want to drop Bettiol?
Because he's an engine that you can use for the rest of the race. If you've got the confidence that you can drop him on the climbs, of course. If you don't have that confidence, then there's a different reason you could drop him. But I do believe Pidcock would have the confidence to drop Bettiol once the hills happen. So Pidcock gets a bit of a gap. Bettiol and Baggioli exist, but in the peloton behind, Van der Poel's not moving. And he's kind of not looking that amazing at the moment either. He's like, good form Van der Poel has already made a move, in my opinion. He's not staying in that second group, or at least
he's marks not Pidcock. Surely.
Yeah, surely. 100%. I agree. But there were other people making moves. Attila Valter was the rider that crashed at the start of the race, was one of the first to make a move once we got onto like an uphill sector in Monte Santi Maria once again. And he bridges up to Bettiol, then he drops Baggioli, and then Bettiol drops Valter.
I didn't get that. Yeah, they were talking and then Bettiol just dropped him. I don't know, if I was Bettiol, I would have stuck with him. Maybe Valter wasn't as good uphill and going too slow, and Valter seems to have pretty good bike handling and good on the gravel descents, so I think that's where he created his gap. Is that right? Okay, well, my theory holds up with evidence. But Pidcock's got a nice gap. He's turned it out to, I don't even know, like 30 seconds, just pretty much off the back of a descent section. like he'd already taken 10, I think, on the uphill section before there. And Bahrain, I didn't really know who they were going for. They were kind of getting into groups. You'll have to fill me in here, Benji. There were like so many. No, MVDP's in group 2. Attacks through. Oh no, there's like a group of. Is there a Shas Patat?
Technically, group 4, right? Because you've got the break, you've got Pidcock, you've got Bettiol, who's still hanging up there.
True.
And then the group, because Valter had dropped in before. Yeah, the break still flying somewhere.
4. He does an attack at the end of like a little rolling bit into a feed zone. And I think there's 2 ways to read it. And I initially read it, I was like, terrible tactical move. Why would you tell people you're in good shape? The other end of the spectrum is sometimes MVDP will be like, I feel terrible, I don't have it. And he'll just like attack just to, I don't know, just to see what happens.
Option 3, he was really hungry and wanted to get to that feed zone very fast.
Yep, that's option 3. I'd probably go in for that one as well. But yeah, there's a counterattack. After that, Wellens punctures, so UAE not having a good crashes. Day. Oh, yeah, this changed the race a lot. Well,
did it?
I don't know if Bettiol was catching it, Pidcock. He was kind of caught in the middle.
Was he already caught by the time he crashed? Because Sheffield also crashed in that same crash. So, like,
we'd crashed. We'd placed a crash.
It was like a pretty straight descent road. Maybe some weird movement in the peloton caused a rider to go down. Everything can happen in a group like that. We don't have pictures of it, so we don't know it. But a shit ton happened with 40k to go, basically. But it didn't result in much until we get to 39k to go. That's when the real action happened. We saw an attack from the group behind. So basically, repeat. We've got the front of the reins, which is 2 breakaway riders that are left, the Marquis and Bistrom. We've got Pidcock chasing those 2. And then we've got attacks from behind, including Kron, Madouas, and Bilbao. So Bahrain once again going in moves like you mentioned. Kron looking really good with that move, was looking good in Andalusia and so forth. Classica Cayenne, so these gravel sections really suit him. Madouas also crashed at the start of the race.
Strong.
Back in action. And then I felt like we had a counter behind on like an uphill section. And Simmons was the one to counter with Valter in the wheel, but that move didn't really do much except for get rid of Van der Poel, right? That's when we saw Van der Poel drop to that second group of that group. I just said group too much in one sentence.
Oh, by the way, Alaphilippe's gone. Like
Shadow Realm.
Yeah, Benji Shadow Realm, my Narnia, he's gone. You're right. Van der Poel then is off the back. He wasn't bluffing, not on a good day. And it's actually puts a lot of pressure on Ineos and Pidcock.
Yeah.
Because previously they had the perfect situation. Pidcock clear, Sheffield in Group 2. He's crashed out with Bettiol. I hope Bettiol's okay. He's in good shape. Sheffield was fine. He just couldn't get a damn bike. Tarlett was in Group 3 now, not in Group 2, and he's trying to work with MVDP to get back to Group 2. Now Ineos have no one to block and disrupt the chase on their team. They do have someone later to help disrupt the chase in Group 2. And so I thought with 30 seconds, the gap or so, maybe it was a bit more to Pidcock, we then have a group behind with multiple teams with multiple riders. FDJ with Gregoire and Madouas. Jumbo with Benoit and Valter. Bahrain with Bilbao and Morich. I don't know if it's Ulysses or Formula. There was Simmons there on his own and Costa there on his own with Bistrom up the road and one UAE rider. And I don't think I've ever seen a more dysfunctional Group 2 which has multiple teams with multiple riders in my life. Maybe I probably have, but probably forgetting some disastrous Vuelta Stage 15. Group. No, but there's multiple teams with multiple riders.
Yeah.
And I think it comes... Morich and Bilbao, they didn't know who they were working for. Benoit and Valter, already not clear what the plan was.
Gregoire looked to be working
FDJ
for Madouas a bit more. So that seems to be the duo that was doing that well. But you're right, and the gap kind of went up until we got to a section later, which is Monte Aperti, where Pidcock basically has caught up to the break, has dropped the breakaway. The market was really strong at that point. Then we see a move in that second group. A move by Tish Benoit, and he gets Madouas and Costa with him. And you'd say that's a pretty good move, but then he gets on like an uphill section, and the gap is like 10 seconds to the
17.
next group. 17 seconds? Okay, it was pretty significant.
No, sorry, 17 from Pidcock to Benoit.
Okay.
He's cut it with that big attack.
Okay. Then Benoit to the group with Valter, Simmons, and Sefov behind was roughly 10 seconds, 15 seconds, roughly.
10 or less, I reckon.
Okay. Then we see a move by, I think, Simmons in the second group, who tries to bridge up towards the Benoit group. And we see Mohoric also trying to follow Simmons, Valter following those two. And Mohoric is the first to drop through. Valter gets to the wheel of Simmons. And Valter seems to see weakness in Simmons because he takes over and drops him. And there's a gap there. There's a significant gap there.
He was offering 0 draft benefit.
Yeah, Mohoric is not in the wheel, and Simmons is not in the wheel of Valter here. They're riding by themselves uphill right now, and especially on a steep section like that, even
with
that
5 meters on 10% gravel, maybe more than 5 meters, negligible benefit.
Valter catches up with Benoit, but exactly at that point, the other two catch up with him as well. And that's where a bit of a fight happens.
Well,
it looked to be.
Yeah. As Valter's 5 meters off Benoit's group with Costa and Madouas, by the way, Benoit is not knowing how to... Costa is not pulling.
Yeah.
Okay, like Costa has been shutting everything down the entire time. That's probably why Benoit attacked. Simmons, to his credit, I think had been doing loads of work for a solo rider. FDJ I got no problem with. They were doing their best. Benoit sees Valter off the back coming and then stops and protests because he's like, why are you bridging across? I initially thought he was getting mad at Costa, and I was like, why is he getting mad at Valter? Like, okay, yeah, in the textbook, Valter sits on Simmons and Mohoric, they bring him back, but it's better to have 2 in 4, and you should keep the move working to keep Simmons and Mohoric behind.
I think from our perspective, completely agree. From our perspective, Valter bridged up without offering support to Mohoric and to Simmons in bridging up. But Benoit might not have seen that. I might have looked back and seen Valter with those other two roughly in his wheel. I would have said, oh, he's bringing the others back. Maybe he saw a different view by looking back than we did on a helicopter angle. And that's the only excuse I can give here for the reaction that came afterwards. And I think it's a plausible theory.
Yeah, I mean, probably Valter should sit in the wheel, really, because he isn't costing Benoit's race at all, really. But he is costing himself energy because, like, he's attacking across to that group, big burst. Now what?
Yeah, agreed.
Like, if you're not going to he's just doing a burst. He gets there. Madouas and Costa see 2 Jumbo-Visma at a group before. They're like, fuck that. We're not pulling. And so it's all going to come back anyway. So he's cost himself. And by the way, we've been talking about this and the cameras have all been on this. You know who's benefiting from this? Sir, because that's what he's going to be. Maybe this year, Tom Pidcock getting more time. It's gone down to 17.
Yeah.
There's protesting. The group comes back. It's 25 again. It's 24 again. On the descents, he's managing the gap well, even without the draft benefit. So okay, let's also think about the context of last weekend in these riders' minds. Jumbo at opening weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Use team tactics to destroy everybody, right? Russell Kerner with Benoit in particular, you know who was in that break with him? Mohoric.
Yeah.
I'm thinking with the gap at 23 seconds now, I was like, come on, guys. Madouas, he was working. He was trying to work. Madouas, Mohoric, Benoit, Valter, Costa is basically a group. Jumbo have to commit and probably do more than their fair share of the work. Because Mohoric is like, I am not going to pull equally with you guys to get torched in the finish.
And he's right.
On an uphill. Of course he's right.
And from that situation, it would get worse as the race goes on. Because at this point, they're a bit frustrated with each other, which can lead to stuff in the rest of the race. But we go further. We go to the, I think it's the Colle Pinzuto was the next sector, if I recall. No, that was Colle Pinzuto. We're going to Le Tolfe already. I'm like, ooh, we're going to Le Tolfe. The gap is roughly 20 seconds. Mohoric goes, and Valter's in the wheel. And that works out. Benoit is playing the really clever game of, whenever Valter has a gap, move back and let the other close it. Exactly like how he played it in Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. That's what he's playing here. But Valter's just the strongest on this sector. He's basically dropping everybody, but right by the end, they seem to crawl back to his wheel. Was that also how you saw it?
Yeah, like Volta was super strong. I don't know who was stronger out of him and Benoit. What I see from this finale is they hyper-focused on Rui Costa. Because like Costa, what Moritz did, rational, I'd probably do the same thing. Like Moritz was working a little bit, but then Benoit was skipping turns in portions of this finale. And like, if a guy's going to start skipping turns to then attack next section, absolutely no way will you pull. Costa, on the other hand, was literally blocking, letting wheels. Like, the way Costa rode was irrational for actually winning the race. I think he just wanted... It was like ballet. It was bad. So, and then Jumbo, that I think they then almost, and this is the benefit of Pidcock going early, they were like focusing on how do we get rid of Costa? What do we do with Costa? How do we stop this guy sitting on us in this group? When in reality, the biggest threat to winning the race
is up the
road. It's Pidcock. Yeah. Back yourself to beat Costa on Siena. If you're Volta and Benoit, take your chances against Costa on Siena, even if he has sat on a bit. You got to bring Pidcock back.
Especially when you know that on Le Tolfe, Costa was having difficulties following the move. So you know he's not the strongest on the uphill here. So with that in mind, the decision at Jumbo-Visma after Le Tolfe should have been one of these two riders needs to domestique. At that point, Valter had visibly been the strongest. So the decision after Le Tolfe would on paper be Benoit starts riding with Valter. But then Benoit goes to the back and starts rolling attacks, which is what you just said. But as a consequence, Valter stays on Moharic's wheel, and Moharic can't follow the move. The other two can, but Moharic can't follow the move. So Valter has to bridge from Moharic's wheel to the group of Benoit now, while Benoit is still pacing until he sees that Valter is coming. But then the others see that Valter is coming and keep pacing. And that's when Valter cracks. So that's when you're like, oh, would Benoit pacing would have been the best idea? We don't know, but on paper it was after Le Tolfe, you know?
Yeah, and maybe Valter drops there because he's been doing way more work. Like when riders were going up the road, like Moritz was counterattacking the run-in. Anyway, this was Group 2 dynamics, like the full deluxe version of it, and full credit to Pidcock for having the cojones, to go at 50Ks to go earlier than Pogacar last year and just go on with it solo. And I feel like we've not spoken about Pidcock enough, but really there's not much to analyze in a man chugging along solo. At no point did I think Pidcock would collapse, but I thought he was much more catchable than Pogacar.
Yeah,
like I 100%.
Think
Pidcock was catchable.
Seconds.
Yeah.
The gap was 7 seconds until they rolled attacks, and then we're like, well, we're not closing it anymore. And like the gap went up to 24 seconds again in the last 5K. It's not happening then, eh? You're throwing the race, and Jumbo-Visma threw the race in the bin in this final by not selecting one leader of the two. Sure, Costa and Sefov could have also raced and Sefov, but they have two riders. If I'm Costa, and I know that I almost dropped on Le Tolfe, I'm also not going to pace.
I agree. But when Valter, and I agree, one of them, or listen, both. And I think Madouas would have worked. Like, Madouas was trying to work and he was bringing moves back, but eventually the guy's A, tired, and B, is like, you guys are just counterattacking me, and then you want me to work with you? Like, come on. If Costa wants to sit at the back and not contribute, that's fine, but he literally comes through in the pace line like he's the teammate of Pidcock. I'm like, bro, the gap is 7 seconds. Like, this doesn't help you either. Like, just sit at the back. I don't know. Moritz knows that he's going to get dropped on Siena. He's attacking, and just congratulations to Pidcock. We saw in Tour of Flanders in 2021 where he had a much better spring in 2020 than in 2022. He had some fueling issues where he went early and I think ran out of gas a little bit. Today, that was on point. Managing to hold a 50K solo for multiple teams chasing behind and a group behind is super impressive. And he said he didn't have much moto help. Wins on Siena with a 20-second gap. Like, Great start to the season for him. Wins the stage in Algarve. It gives a lot for Ineos to be happy about. Fifth in Omloop was the indicator from that group. And yeah, like, where does this put Pidcock up to you, Benji, for the Spring Classics? Does he, to me, I now expect him to be with Pog and MVDP on Quarmont.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't.
He's a generational talent.
I put him just in the tier behind that still, and I don't know why. This race was not against top-tier Pogacars and top-tier Van der Poels.
True. I guess I am one, perhaps, who has been known to overreact to a single race result. Maybe guilty of that in the past. I don't know. I think last year something went wrong, whatever it was, in the classics, and generally, obviously, Tour de France went up the West stage, and the first 2 weeks was very good, I thought. This year, he seems to be locked in, and this is not a... Like, we spoke a lot about Group 2 dynamics, but you have to be fucking strong to hold a 50k solo, especially at his size, 60 kilos or less. Incredible handling. And yeah, he wins. I was happy to see Madouas take second, actually. He beat Benoit in the sprint up Siena. Benoit third, Costa fourth, Volta fifth, Moritz sixth. So Moritz wasn't, like, finessing. The guy literally didn't have it compared to the other guys on the climb. Bilbao 7th, Gregoire 8th.
Oh, la, 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 la.
Ooh, la, 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 la.
Oh, la, 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 la.
Friendship over with Alaphilippe. New friend, Romain Gregoire, says the country of France. Formula 9th, Andreas Krohn, 10th.
Amazing, Gregoire. What else can you say? Like, the dude has been showing it already this year. We've announced him decades ago that he was coming, but it's still amazing to see it on first year World Tour, 8th in Strade, 6th in Trofeo Laigueglia, 5th in Fonardèche. It's a matter of time before the world knows who Romain Gregoire is, and he's definitely going to show more. And the dude's bloody 20. We can't forget that fact. It's actually insane, but it's nice to see.
Great bike handler as well, like one of the best descenders. You
got no clue. Why am I asking you?
I don't. Why? Sure. Like motocross rider. You tell me.
Ski jumping rider, yeah.
Mate, I start watching when they get a road bike and they do U23 races, then I'll watch. Jan Christian, is he the UAE guy? I am watching the CX. Maybe I should.
If you look at how Jumbo played this final, like a final conclusion, would you blame the team car? Would you blame Benoit? Would you blame Valtteri? Or do you think the blame kind of lies in between all of them?
I think they just focused on the wrong, like, outcome they were trying to achieve. Yeah, which was Costa. Maybe they were playing for the podium. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think. Maybe in the last 4Ks. I'm talking 25, 30Ks. Yeah. They're not playing for the podium there. I think they let Costa sitting on completely dictate how they were going to approach this final, and trying to get into a group or a move without Costa, and lost sight of the real threat up the road. I do think, even with that being said, I think Benoit sitting at the back of the group of 5 after what happened in opening weekend last week is a little bit naive if you expect cooperation, because the natural response, if you're not pulling through, is dysfunction.
Yeah.
Like, that's the immediate result of that. Your guys will do one rotation, you skip, they're going to be like, what the hell, dude? Stop. So I also think Valtteri could have played it a bit cooler. Yeah. Letting himself be brought back by... Jesus, am I going through puberty this podcast? Letting himself get brought back by Moritz or Simmons. He didn't need to attack across, unless he had a plan to counter or something, which he didn't.
Is that experience in these situations that he doesn't have from Groupama days? Because he never got in situations where he kind of had to play a role with a different teammate. While here, he has to play that in this race. So maybe he learns from this and does like Benoit, where if Benoit goes, then he waits for the last ride. Well, that's kind of where it went wrong, eh? That's how he dropped, by letting Mohoric close Benoit.
Yeah. I mean, I got to look at the tape. I think Valter, he maybe got a little bit excited about how good his legs were. I don't think the guys like rode the finale deliberately, super selfishly. In fact, I think, I don't know what Sports.coms was saying or whatever. Like, I don't really.
They were like Belgium and Dutch media seems to be throwing it at Valter, while international seems to be throwing it at Benoit.
I don't really see it. Yeah, I don't really see Valter doing anything for nefarious reasons. I think it was sort of poor decisions. And maybe the car needed to say, Benji, listen,
100%.
Both you guys get on the front and exchange pools.
Or decide, that's difficult, because you don't know who's stronger. Well, if you base it on Lotolfe, then you'd say Valter would be leader. But if you base it on 2 kilometers later, then you'd say Benoit is leader.
Before Lotolfe, I thought Valter should have got on the front and pulled the gap back really hard. And then have Benoit anticipate when they've brought Pidcock back. That's what I thought. Now, obviously, afterwards, he looks stronger, whatever, but yeah. And also but then it's different. If Bagac is in the group, right, and Van der Poel's in the group, no way we would say that. We'd be like, that's ridiculous. You can't, just because you have 2 guys, I mean, you pull them back. But no offense to Matawaz, Mohoric, and Costa, but I see them all pretty equal. They're not, and maybe even Benoit is a little bit punchier than Mohoric and Costa on the finish. So, yeah, I think they needed to make a decision, and one guy needed to sacrifice. They didn't.
Yep. If you're not at the front of the race, you can't win the race. Great analysis.
Well, it's true, and we're seeing it more often. Like, maybe we're not. I haven't done any data on that, but yeah, credit to Ineos, and it didn't go all right for them, all correct for them this race. Sheffield crashing out, and then Tullet being off the back of G2 chasing, and so now Pidcock's won Brabant, Strade, Amstel, 3rd in Dwars-Door, 3rd in Kerner. I think he's going to have a big classic season, Tom Pidcock. But yeah, anything coming out of this race, Benji? Pidcock winning Tirreno?
No, his time trial, man.
It's only 11 Ks. He's running against Enrique Mas.
He was. Roglic is there, mate. Come on. He's not in amazing form, I think. Gelderman.
Jumbo
is
said
back.
Roglic is there just to have a 1-week holiday. And we always believe Jumbo press releases about their riders.
I'm telling you, Wilco Sellerman is coming.
Wilco what?
Sellerman. Gelder in English. Teaching you. Gelder is Seller. I think.
I call him Kelder Goat.
Basement man.
Kelder Goat. I don't know. But yeah, I'd watch out for Pidcock GC at Tirreno. I don't think he's there to just win a stage.
Bernard?
I think, that climb's too hard. Enric will ruin him.
Miles will ruin him.
Yeah. And then Pidcock will hold the wheel.
I don't have too much more to add when it comes to this race. I think we've said the most important things. A bit unfortunate that Simmons doesn't end in the top 10 after the race he rode, because he really would have deserved the top 10 spot
he didn't
after
ride
that race.
Costa.
Yeah.
That's the harsh reality. It's like, we've said, Costa didn't do this, but Costa's world champion.
Because of that.
For a reason.
Because he's like that. Because he's a bit of a snake in groups. But hey, it's unfortunate that Simmons isn't in that top 10. Kroon strongly in that top 10. A lot of riders that have bad luck back in this top 10, like Manuel's getting second, Costa in there. We had Formolo who had his puncture early on. So seems like there was an opportunity to come back after all. And those riders might have even been stronger if they didn't have that. Okay. Throw it back to you.
Virus Quickstep, huh?
Ouch. I don't think...
When's the Lefebvre column published?
I don't know. I've never actually read one of them.
Oh, come on. They're so good.
I trust everybody else to start shouting about it.
Yeah, like, listen, the good bits hit English language media pretty quickly after it's published. Alaphilippe didn't look good.
No, he didn't look good, but...
It's one race, but...
It's one race, but it's also like, it's a race that shows something, eh?
Yeah.
For MSR, what does it matter for MSR? I don't know, because that's only like the Poggio. Unless UAE does Cipressa hard again, which is also a possibility. We never know that. But when it comes to the rest of the team, I think Baggioli looked pretty okay for a bit there. But he doesn't seem to have that long race.
He's not that guy.
Strength. And he also almost rode into a ditch afterwards. So he survived, which is already a win. He's not that guy. I kind of agree. It's not that hard race kind of puncher rider. It's more an easier race puncher rider, if that makes sense. Now, I don't know. I don't have much more to say about the men's race, but when it comes to the women's race, I read another tweet by Anne Braakman that said that Vollering shouted "bitch" after the finish line, which
Really?
shit's stirring up, mate.
Damn.
Popcorn in hand.
Man.
And then she pretended it was a joke.
I always swear at you, Benji, and then be like, aha! It's so funny. Okay. Well, if you're interested in why that might have happened, go and check out our Strade Bianche women's recap. I highly recommend it. There was some also interesting team tactics in the final. But yeah, I think Pidcock's on for Tirreno. I think Patrick Lefevre articles are incoming. And I mean, to be honest, where's Mauri?
Mauri van Seven? I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him all race.
Where's Schmidt?
Is he even in this race?
No.
That's positioning, man. That's the reason. No, even without positioning as an issue, he should be here.
Yeah.
And at the classics.
Yeah, it has to be. Ballerini's not earning a spot in compared to give the young guy a chance. Anyway, let us know down below what you thought of Strade. I'm in on Pidcock. We always love a future Knight of the Realm winning a big race. Can't wait for him to contest GC at the Tour de la France. And yeah, that was our Strade Bianche recap. We have Paris-Nice starting tomorrow. Tirreno-Adriatico starting on Monday. We have 8 days in a row of cycling coverage on LRCP.
Amazing.
We'll hope you join us for that. Until then, ciao.